We are, well, Jesse introduced Michael already. I am Sjoerd Boersma. We started Learning Stone in 2013, and right now we build it in, or we built it at that time already as a blended learning tool, meaning that it's a mix of live meetings in a room combined with an online presence where you can find all the materials and all the planning, which was pretty normal blended then. We started in 2014. Since then, we have found customers in Europe and the US mainly, and they are using it until the Corona hit us, and blended started meaning something else. Blended was not just being live together and the online tool. People had to move online with the live meetings as well. We had a lot of customers who were anxious at the time COVID hit. And we did a lot of trainings ourselves, and we did everything online, and we trained people on doing the complete training online. So that's about online blended training. That's what Michael will talk about today. So he will start out talking about the opportunities. He will talk about what blended learning is when there's no physical face-to-face sessions, and he will talk more on complete moving online with blended training. So Michael, please get started. There's a couple things we would like. If you would leave on your camera, it gives us a little more interaction. We can see what you think and how you respond to us. Please, we're just with a small group. Whenever you have a question, pose the question. If you click on, everyone is muted, and that's great. If you click on the space bar on your keyboard, the microphone opens up, and just ask questions. So Michael, please go ahead.
You. Okay, thank you. We have to improvise a little bit because Sjoerd is the only co-host, so he's moving the presentation along. So I'm going to ask him to go forward now and again. So welcome. And what Sjoerd just did, forcing you to turn on your camera, is something that we have been doing in training sessions a lot recently. And we think Zoom's a great platform because we've been doing quite large training groups, and we like to see everybody all the time, so you can't hide from us. Anyway, let me start with a little story about how we started, what we did when this whole Corona crisis hit us, and especially all of our clients. Could you move a slide? And so we did this little, hang on. We did this little research, and about 150 training companies filled in a survey, because we were quite interested. Now we're talking back in April, kind of interested in how everybody was reacting to the whole situation, and we already lost some clients at that point because they were just more or less out of business. And we've probably been in contact with most trainers and training companies compared to anybody, because we're kind of supporting them all the time. So we've heard a lot of stories, but we also, outside of all that negative stuff, we thought we'd ask them about the positive things, right? So we asked them, are there any opportunities in this difficult situation? So, and this is what came out, and I'm going to go through it very quickly because we had an awful lot of reactions. But so can you move one click?
There's one.
And so I spent a whole night clustering all the reactions, and it's not hard science, but it's kind of interesting to see, and we thought it was very inspiring what people said. And we're talking about training companies and training departments, and the first thing they said were a lot of sentences that started with finally, right? So people believed they were going to have a lot of time on their hands, finally develop new courses, finally work on their website, things like that. And also, several people said, we're going to create some e-learnings. Now, I hate that word to start off with, but it's also important to mention that we don't really believe in e-learnings as in self-paced courses to replace the work of a trainer, right? So a lot of people kind of have this secret belief that if they could just put all their training work into some type of video or something, put it online, they could go to the beach and rest, right? And this is something that in real life, in the corporate world, hardly ever happens because you are needed as people. So that's an important thing, and I talked to a lot about that with people recently. Can you go on one step further? Now, another opportunity that came about was, I'm just going to move you guys so I can see my whole screen, was that a lot of people wanted to shake everything up. And I kind of thought that was funny because I already think things are getting shaken up by themselves. But from a positive side, quite a lot of people said, okay, I'm going to now finally reorganize my company or do something creative, right? So, and I kind of like that. And as we were getting nervous about the second and the third and the fourth client saying they were more or less out of business for the whole year, we thought, okay, let's do something. Maybe we should start being creative. So that was kind of a positive thing. And this last cluster I thought was kind of interesting, was that quite a lot of people said, well, I'm going to take some time off. I can't work anyway. So I'll do something else and I'll see my kids more, kind of like that. Now, all the people I deal with never manage to get to that point because everybody's kind of struggling to find alternative things to do, alternative sources of income. And that's what the rest of my talk is actually about. Can you click? Now, when we talk with clients or conferences, we quite often show a diagram that looks a bit like this, just to explain what blended learning is. And I don't have to explain that to you, of course, but we're talking about people being together in some type of face-to-face situation, which we actually think is a good idea, and we actually think it was a lot more fun that me visiting you last year than doing this, right? So we're not the tech company that's trying to replace face-to-face training at all. We're just trying to mix it with, well, in our case, Learning Stone, but at least online technology, because there's a lot of efficiency and power in technology, but we want the human side as well. Click. And now we're in a different situation. So we've started calling this online blended training. And in the beginning, people started saying, but online blended training, isn't that kind of a, that doesn't make sense, right? But actually it does. Now you see that it's more or less the same diagram, except the little happy little participants are
as we see each other right now,
behind their screens, right? And that's the challenge, because it's really a big change for most trainers. And an important thing to talk about is that we're actually moving to everything being online. And of course, I certainly hope that's not always going to be the case at all. It'll be a mix of some sort. But the important thing is to realize that it's a mix of asynchronous and synchronous situations and scenarios. So asynchronous, of course, being stuff happening online on your own time, which has always been kind of the strong point of online learning, that you could do it remotely in your own time, you plan it easily. But we also have synchronous communication, and at this point in time, video conferencing is the most important synchronous communication, but it doesn't only have to be that. And our platform actually is designed to combine with all sorts of synchronous communication, be it really face-to-face or video conferencing, or maybe more, like avatar-based 3D worlds, that kind of thing. and you have to learn how to use it. Can you go to the next slide? So that brings us to how are our trainers and educators going to move forward in this new situation? And we've noticed it's newer than you might think for most people, because there's so much to learn. Well, you guys organizing this conference, I mean, you probably thought, oh, we'll just throw it together easy, just from home. It's going to take us less time. Well, it, of course, and when you're learning,
Peter does not agree, I think.
No, so
Jeffrey does not agree.
exactly. So it's it's a big challenge. Oh, go back.
Yes, click too quick.
So the first thing you have to do, and I'm going to show you how, is redesign your training content. And I'm a Scrum coach in my spare time, let's say, or something that I find interesting. So we've used that knowledge in how to redesign training content. And you have to get to know your synchronous video conferencing tools and your asynchronous tools. Well, let's say Learning Stone. Now, also a huge challenge is how to sell this to your internal or external client. And I think I was talking to Jeffrey about that yesterday or day before yesterday. So there's a lot of challenges and a lot of things can go wrong right now. But what we got as feedback from quite a lot of trainers is that, especially the ones that went forward very quickly and approached their clients with a, with an idea of how to move things online, that they had a lot of their clients allowed them a lot of experimentation because everybody's in this together. So that really helped them, as long as they said, hey, we're experimenting, but we don't want to stop altogether, and can you help us move forward, and we'll do it together. And I've heard a lot of very, very positive stories of people moving forward like that. But I'm not going to help you sell this today. We're going to talk about a few other things. I clicked on my keyboard, but I wanted sure to do that. Thank you. So to start off with, when you design a learning path or scenario, you have to realize that there's one big choice, and it's a choice that we built into Learning Stone, but it's something that you also have to realize if you're designing for synchronous, like video conferencing communication. Is it going to be a collaborative situation, which we often prefer because we think there's a lot of benefits, or is it going to be what we call a solo, or self-paced or individual scenario, which, for example, you can have if you're doing coaching or individual learning, and it doesn't have to be self-paced e-learning. It can also be communicating with a coach or trainer individually. Click. So that's the big first step. Now, before we got shut off physically from our clients, I give a lot of workshops talking about how to redesign training to a blended model. And the idea is always like, okay, so let's imagine we have 4 face-to-face sessions, maybe. And it's quite typical, 4 or 6 or a bit longer. There are sessions, and they might be spread out across a couple of days, or hopefully actually much longer time, because spacing learning always helps, of course. But anyway, well, let's assume there are 4 days. Now, okay, Sjoerd, you have to really go with me now. Okay. Just that.
That's what you get. You want more?
Thank you. So let's assume that we're redesigning, and just before I get to how you can really usefully redesign things, let's assume we're going to kick out one face-to-face session, because we're trying to make things a little bit more efficient, and we're moving some things online. So here we have 3 sessions, and I would suggest moving them further apart. because when you're blended, yeah, it's fine. It's when you're moving towards blended learning, you want to be able to use online tooling for other types of learning. Now, I've just thrown some examples between the live sessions. Actually, I've even started before the first session with an intake, which is something I really like doing. An online intake is very little work as a trainer, but it gives you so much information before you even start. So then even your first session is already better than it would have been. And then of course you can add all these online components between the first and second session and so forth, and end with an evaluation, which again can be much more interesting than the paper evaluation that you throw on the table during the last training session. Okay, but let's move on one step further. Short. Thank you. Now we've moved to online blended training, which means we're doing something with video conferencing. And so one more. And the interesting thing is that even if you're not talking about the asynchronous part, even if you're talking about video conferencing only, there's a lot of design work that goes into it, because, okay, so a session like this is kind of simple because it's got a beginning and end. Well, maybe I'll communicate with a few other people, but design-wise it's simple. But if you're doing training online, we've experienced this in the past half year, it can be very complicated, because if you've been so wise to choose a tool with breakout rooms, and you have a group of people, you get an enormous advantage. You can do so many things, but you have to design it. You have to really practice it, because it's not an easy thing to do. It's much easier to have people in a space and just send them off into small groups, and then they come back, and that kind of training session. But you can do all that online, but it takes a lot of practice. And you have to coordinate it with someone that's helping you, and a lot of things. You can actually lose your participants during a session. I mean, there's a lot of things can go wrong, so you need to practice it. So that's the first part of actually reconsidering the face-to-face sessions when you move online. Okay, one more. And then again, and I've kept it simple now, you start using your online tooling in a spaced model. So that means that further apart, as far apart as you can sell to your clients, and you can fit into your day-to-day operations as a trainer. And then you can get more and more learning done. Okay. Now, how to design this, and this is hopefully the biggest takeaway for today. This is an approach that is kind of based on the way you work in Scrum teams, and one of the very important things is the use of Post-its, and now that very sadly has gone. So we've been experimenting with other types of tooling, and I'm not going to go into them all, but there are lots of online Scrum type of boards and Post-it type design tools online. Okay, but just the general approach is what we do is on a wall or on the table with a lot of Post-its, we fill in these tracks, and this isn't rocket science, so you can change it, but we often use 4 tracks, and they being the organization of the training, or the learning path, which could be, I mean, if it's face to face, I mean, you have to get a meeting room, and you have to send an invoice, and you have to communicate with your client. There's a lot of organizational stuff going on, but if you're spreading learning, you have to design it, because otherwise it's going to be messy. And if you're developing content, you need a separate track for that, because some content takes time to develop. If you need videos, obviously you have to shoot them and do all this stuff to get them ready. So it's good to know. Can you click one further? Sure. Okay, well, we'll go back. Sorry, that was too quick. Okay, so well, you saw the general idea that those are pictures from workshop sessions at the end, that you have a lot of post-its on paper, and so in the content and communication, for quite often you would have something like a couple of videos, some written materials, existing materials from your own training or online stuff that you curate within a learning path, that kind of thing. And then we have two tracks, which are individual versus collaborative situations. So individual things are like doing a quiz or doing an intake. Collaborative learning in an online scenario is, for example, and we did this with dozens of trainers in the past months, you create a video, you have some type of assignment, and we did this experiment training trainers that we let them create a 1-minute video about blended learning, which really forces them to, you know, think about it, and they would have to upload them, and then the other participants would react to them, and a very, very engaged learning scenario is set up very quickly. So if you would plan something like that before, during, between the and after the face-to-face sessions, you would stick those assignments in that right column or track, as we call them. Now, okay, one further. Now, the nice thing about post-its, and they really beat online tools, is that people feel very free, and it's very, you know, it's kind of in the moment. And so what happens is that they write down, okay, I'll have an introductory video, and I just stick it on, and they're done, right? So it's, the whole thing is designed. It's they have a moment that the video is shown, and then you can talk about, okay, you put that there. When's the training starting? Oh, next week. Oh, okay. That's not going to be a Hollywood movie. It's going to be a quick video. So, you know, it's very easy to talk about the whole production side of it, and so forth. So by doing this, and we used to do sessions of about 2 hours, and we would redesign a whole training course. And of course, after that, the real work starts, implementing videos, all the stuff. But the start of it is super fast, and it's very motivating for trainers who often find it a lot of work to move what they've been doing for years, you know, face-to-face, to an online model, and now a completely online model, making it even harder. Okay, one further. So let's go synchronous, and to talk about that a little bit is, I'm not going to make it very long, but the thing about these type of sessions, and we're not being very interactive now because we didn't actually know we were going to see you, which I really think is great, because if you don't see people, it's like really, really hard to do. I mean, blind webinars are horrible to do. I mean, it's just, it's killing for trainers to do them. So I think they should be forbidden. Okay, one further. But when you do big groups, and these are 3 groups that I've very recently done, if you can spot me, they can actually be super engaging. And now on the right, and it's not the subject of today to go into video conferencing tools, but there's a lot of choice out there, and there's a lot of things you can talk about. You know, you can talk about security and technical stuff and all these details, but actually for training, there are a few things that are super important. So actually, we like to use Zoom, and Zoom, of course, is very popular, but internationally, they really had a hard hit because of the security issues. So there are quite a lot of clients of our clients that say you can't use Zoom. So, which is super sad, because the first thing that you need training is that you can see everybody at the same time, and that's Zoom is better than anybody out there doing that. And I'm sure teams will catch up soon. I hope so, but it's the first thing I would want, because I've heard of people doing training with teams and only seeing like the people that react and not the rest, and you die. I mean, it's the end of your life if you're going to train like that all the time. I spoke to someone, a Russian trainer who was doing in some big company, training every day and only seeing just a couple of people, and the rest, no idea if they were there, right? So it's very hard to do. And there's a few other things. Sound quality is super important. We really like Whereby, for example. It's a nice tool. Does anybody know that? You can raise your hands. Ever heard of it? No? Okay, so it's actually a Swedish company, and they're really growing, but but their sound quality is still not exactly as good as Zoom, so that for training it gets very tiring if the sound quality isn't good. Recording, and preferably automatic recording, is really important, because most scenarios you want to be able to repeat things. Anyway, breakout rooms and ease of joining. I don't know how it is now, but there were some like tools like WebEx that used to be horrendous to join. I haven't been using it for a couple of years, so probably it's better, but that's for training purposes very important. Anyway, so just a few things that you definitely need, and all the rest is nice, but you can solve in other ways. Whiteboards, you can do because you can share screens, you can solve things in many different ways, and then you can actually have fun. And that's why I wanted to show these beautiful pictures of ours, because what we did, we were training trainers that were I don't know, not out of work, but kind of had a lot of time in their hands. So we did this.
To figure out the future.
Exactly, right? So we did these brilliant sessions with a lot of guest speakers, and then about halfway I would do these fun picture moments to wake them up again. And as time progressed, and we had a lot of guest speakers and training actors and all these different type of people, and then we discovered, while we've been in the business for years, that we can go so much further to make things fun and engaging, you know, in video conferencing. So there is hope, but you have to be very strict. So anybody turns off their screen, just leave, right? If you're not paying attention, just go away, because for the life of the trainer, it's terrible, right, to do training if nobody reacts. And so now we didn't design this as very interactive, but at least I can see that you're there. Okay, next one. How are we doing time-wise? Okay. Asynchronously. Now, I would love, of course, to have filled this hour showing Learning Stone, but I didn't. I'm not going to do that, but I'm talking about it a little bit. So let's click one further. So now, what's an asynchronous environment do? Now, asynchronous platforms can be anything. Can be the intranet of a company. Can be a WordPress site, can all these things with information, and Learning Stone was developed as kind of a suite of tools that do a lot of little bits and pieces, and these are the core things that you're talking about. One of them is distribution of material, and that can be very basic, just a couple of videos, but the structuring is very important. And we have something called a course timeline, which is more or less an authoring tool, but it's much more agile, which you now understand that I find very important, that you can change things all the time. So very differently from authoring tools that you spend like half a year designing something and then you put it out there. It's more of an authoring tool that you do preparation, but only as much as you need. And if you're in a training course like the ones I was showing, and you're in a hurry, you can get things up and running within the week and then just keep working, right? So it's a very different approach than preparing everything, putting it out there, and letting people start learning. But you're actually moving along with your group and changing your material and adding things all the time. And maybe when you scale, you do get something that's, you know, you can repeat material, but it's still per group. You can very easily change things and the distribution of material isn't a static thing. Anyway, planning, and you see a lot of communication, sharing, collaboration. That's all very important in a asynchronous platform. Now, of course, I'm kind of making this division between synchronous and asynchronous, and on a platform like that, you have kind of dialogue and chat type of things which are near synchronous, but it's still a bit different. And of course, there are a lot of typical learning tools that you can use, or you can connect to other tools in the world, because there's no platform that will cover all your needs. So you just want to use stuff that's out there as well. And that's what I kind of like about the learning world. There's not just one tool, there's a million. And as we work with more and more trainers, we see that they actually find tools, sometimes tools that were designed for schools, and they find it's a perfect fit, and they use our platform, and they step out into those other tools for specific learning purposes. And that's great that it's that flexible. I keep clicking on my keyboard. Click
on my keyboard.
Thank you. Anyway, Learning Stone is an environment, and I'm not going to go into the technicalities, but it's a workspace. We call it a workspace. It's a generic word. And actually, newsflash, we're now in 6 languages. So, and workspace is a generic English word, but actually now, I don't know if this can be very popular with you, but last week we also added Russian. So it's Learning Stone's designed in English, but we're moving to more and more languages. And the basic concepts are that you have a workspace, and then in that environment, in the learning environment, there are group spaces. It's a typical Learning Stone word, and they're like the classrooms in the building, and they're the group spaces contain learning materials, course timelines, and all sorts of collaborative functions, so that the groups can communicate with each other, or not with each other, only with the trainer, and that's what we call the solo scenario. Let's see. I wanted to stick to 3/4 of an hour, so I have a few more minutes. Now, one more click. Now, I'm not going to demo Learning Stone today, but just to give you an idea of what a platform like this looks like. This is a very basic example. It's called the company. It's our demo company. It's called Training Co, and it's a train the trainer learning track, which is very typical for our world. We have a lot of project management training, lots of leadership, sales, communication, business writing, all those. Sorry. Languages, all that type of thing, and in all cases, they're not schools. It's all training or corporate learning of some sort, and usually there's a mix of videos and all sorts of learning components that you can add in this central part. That's the course timeline, and that's a configurable thing. Now you see here on the left, there's something called dialogues. On the right, there's something that we just call the wall, like in Facebook, and that's just for ongoing communication. And it's all designed to connect people. And you see, while you guys are organizing this conference, that connecting people and making them communicate is an art, right? It's very, very difficult to do right. And I can say that because you've experienced, like, where do they tie into each other? How do they onboard? And how do you stop them from sending 100 mails of how you should do things? And so a platform like this is the art of letting people collaborate without them, having really hard time. Okay, I'm getting a question. Good for you.
You read it?
Yeah, I'm just opening it. Okay, I'm a co-host now. It's good to know. I hadn't seen that. Okay, so well, if you want to elaborate on the question, please do. But I'll just give it a go. So
Yes,
sorry.
sure. Sorry.
Yep.
I'm seeing the train the trainer professional. This is a training, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, this training includes evaluations, like how post-test, etc.
Yes, yes. So yes, certainly. There's you see the link at the top called progress. And now what? Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you can't
No,
click on it here. This
on
is
it.
just a
No,
static
sorry.
image
Yeah.
because
It's a
we just want to
PowerPoint
show
slide.
you it very superficially. I'll
Yeah,
tell you
I
in
just
a minute.
want to make it just to let me elaborate. Level 1 evaluations is technically a test to evaluate the training, and level 2 are score assessments that users complete. So technically, if they fail or pass the training.
Yeah, definitely. There's Learning Stone has a whole section of the application. It's called Learning Stone Forms, and it's an environment that you can put forms together, and there are a lot of examples. But so one of the things you can do is just to create tests and quizzes and that kind of thing, so you can actually go through a training and have a formal assessment. But we have we believe that training is quite often not such a formal thing. So in practice, testing can be interesting, but ongoing communication about the progress of a participant is often more important. So Learning Stone has a concept called progress markers, and what you do is you add little progress markers to all the components in Learning Stone, and then together this compiles a report. So it can be much more of an informal progress tracking, just to actually see if the user is engaged with all your material, which is often a much harder thing to test. For example, if you have a couple of videos, you might not need the learner to know every detail, so you could test them on everything, but it's very important for you to know that they've actually watched them before they come to the next video conference, for example, right? So that's a level of ongoing mini testing instead of just big formal testing. But of course, the forms that you can create the tests so that you can actually stop people from continuing if they don't pass on a certain level. And then the evaluation of the training itself can either be, most trainers just stick to an end of training evaluation, but you can, if it's longer, especially if you're spreading the learning, it's great to have like evaluations stuck in in several moments, and it's very, very easy to do in Learning Stone because you just add the same form 3 times, for example, with just a few questions to know how they're going. But having said that, just to show that we're really committed to a blended model, we really always say that trainers should do a lot of the communication and quality checks also in person. So I could, of course, ask you guys with a form how you like the training, if this was a training situation. But just in having a loose discussion might actually give me more information. So it's great to have a platform that you can use all the technical tools, but it's nice to move back and forth with face-to-face learning as well. Does anybody have another question? While you're thinking about it, to have a look at Learning Stone is very easy because there's a free environment, so you can just go to the site and you can just create a workspace like this, and it has examples in it. And it's so Hector, you also speak Spanish? Just guessing.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great, because we're also in Spanish.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Because
So,
I am from Puerto Rico, we need to understand that Spanish is different in every country.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
we're not there yet. I know that very well. I lived in Venezuela myself, so forgive me, but
No,
right now it's Spanish, and we tested it out with most people kind of accept it.
No,
So,
it's fine. It's actually it's great to know about more platforms are getting involved in different languages.
yeah.
So technically, it's great, especially because in my corporation we have a lot of people that talk Spanish and are frontline employees, and they actually like to take the training in Spanish rather than in English.
Yeah. It's in most countries. I mean, of course, in the States, and there are a couple of English-speaking countries, but most countries, English is very accepted, especially in the corporate world. But I mean, apart from maybe the CEOs and things, if you move around in a corporation, a lot of people prefer learning in their own language, and so what Learning Stone does is so we provide the framework in now 6 languages, but you can actually create the content in multiple languages at the same time. So this train the trainer, if I switch the framework to Spanish, which if you create a free space, there's a multilingual version which includes Spanish in it, so you can the actual content of the whole training will switch with it, right? So the videos are actually shot in English, but the subtitles switch with it, so it'll get Spanish subtitles, and that's something that you can do yourself. So it's not that it's just using Google Translate to translate it. You're actually implementing it at the same time in multiple languages.
Yeah. So every participant can choose what language he wants to see the same course in.
Yeah. So that's hopefully, I mean, we really believe in catering for languages, not only between countries but also within countries. So that's why multilingual approaches are becoming more important, and it's becoming easier to do.
Yeah. So what
do you have any other questions? We have to check the time.
We have some time for more questions if you have them.
Michael, this is Peter. I'd like to ask a question about
learning
management systems that companies are using for tracking their training. How does Learning Stone then, or the trainers that using Learning Stone, work with an LMS or around an LMS or whatever?
Actually, we're kind of keeping Learning Stone as a individual system and not connecting so much, because when we started designing Learning Stone, and of course we have a background in e-learning, so we know all about API and SCORM and all that type of thing. But we've actually we're focusing on providing either within corporations or for external training providers, a tool that doesn't connect to the corporation. And we're seeing that one of the reasons that that's successful, even though you would think, hey, you want to connect everything with everything, is that a lot of learning is done outside of the corporation in the private space. So of course sometimes we get clients that, okay, we're looking for our corporate LMS, and we're not a typical corporate LMS, and we're not trying to be at all. and we do have internal training, training departments using it, but we really believe that, for example, if you do a leadership training or something like that, and you're in a collaborative model, it's not something you're going to do nearly in the intranet of a company, right? So that's the benefit. But sometimes you really want the internal corporate tracking, and Learning Stone isn't your typical tool for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's lots of players.
No, my question was, I realized that my question was more along the lines of you're training trainers, and they're living in the rest of the world as well. Do they have any issues with, or any benefits or any needs for accommodating some of the things you're doing with this other requirement within their company for reporting and tracking training? How do you address that, unless you don't at all?
Well, not so much. I mean, something that we're starting to do is connect with LTI connections with learning management systems, but we're not. Our ambition isn't to connect all the collaborative space with that LMS. So and that's something that you. I don't know. We have a lot of conversations about this. You know, sometimes you think we want to connect it all, and in some cases, if that's what you need, that's what you need. But we're providing an external tool which is much more agile, and training companies can move into the corporation, use Learning Stone, and then close it off, and you know, with respect to the privacy of everything that's happened. Just as if you were going to a, you know, if you're talking about face-to-face training, if you were going to an external location to learn, right? And you're not actually going into the cafeteria of the company to learn. It's kind of that difference. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a question as well, and actually, Peter, you kind of asked one of the. I had two questions. You asked one of them, so that's awesome. But I was also curious if there are particular. So I support a sales organization. I'm sort of doing sales enablement within my company, and I was curious if there were particular industries, or if there was, you know, have you worked specifically with, you know, a sales organization, or is it sort of training in general, and generally L&D departments, you know, that kind of the whole organization?
We actually have a lot of companies providing sales training with Learning Stone as their online environment. It's a typical type of client for us. We're actually, I just came off the line just before this meeting with a sales training company that we want to use ourselves, and they're actually one of our clients, and they use Learning Stone, and basically you can't learn sales 100% without any face-to-face learning. I mean, it's you want the interaction with people, because you know it's part of the learning, but a lot of the theoretics of it, you know, all the videos you can watch, all that you can organize, and you can let people do it in their own time, and then you can test them a little bit in between and give them assignments. So Learning Stone is the environment for all that, and that works very well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Actually, if you I don't know if you all use Zoom a lot, but at moments like this, you just double click on the person, and so you can push the presentation aside. Any other questions, or I think we should nearly wrap it up. We're nearing